All right. Good evening, everybody. We are live from Loudmouth Sports Talk. We are here with Ahead of the Curve. This is the inaugural broadcast. My name's Robbie. That's Chris. I'm the host with the most. I don't like to boast. He's white as a ghost. He likes sourdough toast, and he lives by the coast. Chris, how you doing tonight?
I got nothing for that. I mean, I'm doing great. I just was not expecting a free-form rapping introduction. Well played. I'm doing great, though. Thank you for having me.
That's as much rapping as I can do. It ain't Christmas time just yet. So we're going to talk about something that nobody's talked about in a long time, and that is COVID-19.
Everyone's favorite non-polarizing, non-political topic.
Absolutely. We're keeping things clean and fun and lighthearted, so we're going to talk about a deadly pandemic, baby.
That's responsible for 140,000 deaths in the United States alone.
Yeah, that's not what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about something more important, and that's that the Marlins have 2 more positive cases. It's a struggle to get anything going here, but finally get the season off the ground. The Marlins have 19 total cases. That's 17 players. Chris, give us your thoughts on that. Give us your thoughts on how the Marlins have handled this. Why haven't they handled it better? And is it simply because they play in Miami and the Miami lifestyle is loose, lush, and totally fun?
Well, it's tough to figure if that's part of it yet because they, really this kind of started while they were in Philadelphia. So it followed them there. As far as
18 total cases, that's 17 players.
I'm kind of hearing some feedback, so sorry about that.
That's all right. You're good. Keep on going. We're hearing you.
The Marlins have had 17 players alone. That's almost a third of the player pool. Like, it's becoming to the point where it's almost farcical. It's hard to tell who's going to be available when they do start to play again. If the reports were that they were going to start playing again next week, all their games were postponed through Sunday with the intention of being made up. But these are major players they're missing. There's a handful of starting pitchers, Sandy Alcantara, Jose Urena. 2 of their better hitters are involved, and Harold Ramirez and Garrett Cooper. This is really ripped right through their roster. And that's just talking about the strategic baseball-oriented aspect of this, not the question as to whether they should have just gone into the bubbles and done this at multiple sites, and whether they're going to be spreading it to other teams. And now the Phillies have 2 positive cases, a member of their coaching staff and a member in their locker room staff as of this afternoon. So they've postponed their weekend series with Toronto. It's hard to tell just what the long-term scope of this is going to be for at least another week or so, because that's how long the virus is supposed to kind of rage on, between a 10 and 14 day incubation period. So
do we have any news on NL MVP candidate Miguel Rojas? Is he still healthy and capable of playing ball right now, or is he?
I haven't seen Miguel Rojas' name linked there, but again, it's up to the players if they want their names released or part of it. And part of it's also seeing who's been scratched from lineups. That was where you saw those first couple names linked to the COVID-19 pandemic, was when they were taken out of the lineups. I think Urena was scheduled to start on Sunday afternoon against the Phillies. A few of the other players that were mentioned that did not play that game. So that's where you really got to see it. The rest of the team played that Sunday, and they won the game on Sunday as well. So as far as the entire identities of all 17 guys, you may or may not know it by the end of this news cycle.
Right. What are we talking about in terms, because they can't lose games. I mean, 60 games is already a truncated amount for the season. What are we talking about in terms of makeup? What's the process that they're thinking about? I think you mentioned a minor league doubleheader sort of thing.
Yeah, my expectation is that they would, there are going to be doubleheaders at some point. You can't really extend the season too much longer as far as dates are concerned. So when they do come back and start playing games, when they do make up these games, the Jeff Passan just reported within the last hour that the MLB and the Players Association have agreed to play doubleheaders in 7-inning formats, which is common in the minor leagues. I cover the Daytona Tortugas, who are an affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds. That's what they've done as long as I've been there. When they've had to have doubleheader games, they'll play just 2 7-inning contests back to back, maybe about an hour in between. That'd be my expectation for this situation too. So I would imagine that's what it's going to look like. It's okay as far as I'm concerned. The big change that I've noticed, and I'm not in particular favor of, is the runner on second base as it pertains to extra innings. That's the one real change I really don't like. But when they do come back and start playing, that's about what you'll expect. You'll expect them to go ahead and play a couple of double headers, whether it's with the Orioles and the Yankees, I think it was, or whoever their opponents are. They'll have to get right back into it, and they're going to have to play a lot of games in a short amount of time.
Well, that is something. So if we go into these double headers, I know it's probably not going to happen because major league staffs are they're strict with their pitchers now, and that's something that me as a former pitcher, I really wish that they wouldn't be, because I want to see dudes throw like 300 innings a season. Who would be, in a perfect world, who would be somebody you could see pitching both heads of a doubleheader?
Both heads of a doubleheader.
Yeah,
that's a really good question. Currently, I mean, it's
well, yeah. I mean, we're not talking about Burt Blyleven or anybody.
Yeah,
we're not talking about guys from the '80s who actually probably did pitch two heads of a doubleheader.
Yeah,
I'm talking about somebody, if the rules of baseball, so to speak, the rules of coaching, where you don't want to put 5 days between your starting pitcher. You want them to go out there for both heads of the doubleheader. Who do you think could do it? Who in Major League Baseball would be able to go out there and get 2 wins in a day?
I think you just have to find somebody who's crafty as opposed to like a power arm. Rich Hill, maybe. I think it would kind of comes to mind. Somebody who's not going to blow you away, but somebody who could go out there and eat some innings and
Kyle Hendricks.
Keep people off balance. Kyle Hendricks is a really good shout out as well. Mike Soroka from Atlanta, I think, can certainly eat some innings and doesn't overthrow.
Kyle Hendricks already has the first complete game shutout of the season.
Yeah, I mean, he looked good.
Early pick for NL Cy Young Award if the season were to end 3 days ago.
So yeah, those would be the kind of pitchers that I would look at if you're looking about guys that can really have longevity in a, whether it's a doubleheader format or even a pitching a complete game now when you're kind of hoping to shorten the bullpens as much as possible. I would say it's got to be somebody that's not going to be looking to blow guys away on every single at bat.
So you'd say that a team with a stronger bullpen would be at a greater advantage for a shortened season than a team with a stronger starting 5.
Well, I think in the beginning of the season, yes, because you're not seeing a lot of guys throw more than 5 innings right now. This is being treated like an extended version of spring training. So early in the season, these first 15 games, which is a quarter of the season now, you really are going to rely on some arms in the bullpen to carry you. And I think you're seeing that, especially with the Rockies. Like we talked about them off camera. Their pitching staff is tops in the league right now in ERA, and their bullpen's really been exceptional to begin the season. And I think you're going to have to see that across the board. Some of these teams with the deeper pens, the Mets, the Yankees, immediately come to mind.
We got one in our comments section on the subject of 2 dudes or somebody who could throw both heads of a doubleheader. We've got Madison Bumgarner as an option. What do you think about him? Could he go out there for 2 games for Arizona?
When I think about Madison Bumgarner and all those World Series games that he pitched, there's no doubt. I mean, he could pitch forever. Like even at his age now, in his mid-30s, I'm sure if you told him that we need these 2 games, he'd go do it. I want to say he's in his early.
He is 30 years old. He'll be 31 in 3 days.
That's astonishing. He feels like he's been around forever. He was on that 2010 team, so I would have thought he'd been in his mid-30s. So he's only 30 years old. That's incredible.
He's 31 in less than 3 days. He's
wow. That's a good shout out to whoever suggested that, though. I definitely will second Madison Bumgarner as a name that can go out there and do the job.
That was actually Loudmouth Sports Talk founder/co-founder/good all-around dude, Courtney Brown. He knows all sorts of things about all sorts of sports, so it was not surprising to see him drop a good suggestion.
Drop some knowledge. Well done.
Anybody paying attention? I know there's only a few of you, but if you are, any questions you've got, drop them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them, and if I can't, Chris will, and if he can't, he's that way. If he can't, then it's truly an unsolvable mystery. So we're going to move right along here. Everybody's seen it. His name is Joe Kelly, and he is the hero of Major League Baseball. He likes to throw at villains, and these villains are the Astros. Chris, Team Joe or Team Stro?
Can I be neutral? Like I feel like this is an odd line to walk because
that
obviously
would be consistent with your personality.
It's an odd line to walk. I would lean towards Joe Kelly, I suppose. I'm not a big proponent of beanball and player retribution, but it is a part of the fabric of the game. So, I mean, I've been hit by a pitch. Granted, it was in Little League, and it was probably about a 75-mile-an-hour fastball as opposed to a 98 mile per hour heater coming at your head. But getting hit with a baseball hurts. So
and Kelly's the first one was a breaking ball, which means it might have actually slipped his grip.
Yeah.
The second one looked intentional.
So the first one was a 3-0 fastball that was 98 behind Alex Bregman's head. But yeah, the curveball might have got away from him against Correa, but it still did not look particularly good.
Well, he did break a window on his own house.
Yeah, that was the first thing I thought about when I saw that, was the fact that Joe Kelly earlier this offseason at home missed his pitching cage or whatever you want to call it entirely and broke a window in his own house.
He missed his virtual catcher and busted his own window.
So my first thought was, well, I guess he has practiced this, or set up this pitch in spring training or beforehand. So, I mean, I'm not a big fan of beanball. I'm not a fan of vigilante justice as it pertains to Major League Baseball. But what I can say,
well, you're an olive branch pacifist, so.
Well, what I can say is that people are aggravated that the players really kind of skated by punishment as far as the Astros are concerned. No one was suspended. The title still stands. It's not stripped. There's no asterisk. And despite the fact that Jeff Lunau lost his job, that AJ Hinch lost his job, that Alex Cora has lost his job in Boston, Carlos Beltran lost his job in New York, there was really nothing truly done about the players. And in those situations, you kind of leave it to the players to police themselves. This is what's going to happen. Fortunately for everyone involved, there wasn't a brawl. It was a coming together, a big disagreement with the benches clearing. But, again, we're kind of worried about social distancing in this day and age. There wasn't a lot of that going on either. There were guys on both teams within a few feet of each other, shouting at each other.
Well, extreme heat does kill the virus, or at least doesn't allow the virus to spread. And you can tell that there were some hot tempers there. So I would imagine they were all pretty safe.
Yeah, so it was the one thing I wondered as it pertained to the Astros this year. When you go back to spring training, they were getting plenty of hate from the fans. They were getting plenty of signs. There were people they had to stop fans from being allowed in the ballpark with like cardboards and poster boards and stuff like that, because the harassment was ridiculous all the way down in West Palm. So the idea was, with the crowds not being there, that the Astros might kind of get a pass for the entire year. And by the time we roll back to baseball in 2021, we'll just all be happy enough to be at the ballpark and watching a game to begin with. So no one would care anymore. But quite clearly, people still are holding this grudge, both in the fans, in the fan sector and among the players. So this might not be the last of this. I'd be very surprised if it is, quite frankly.
Well, the golden rule of sports is if you cheat, don't get caught. And if you're not going to not get caught, don't cheat.
I do think it's interesting how Joe Kelly's kind of embraced this hero of the people. I mean, you saw the Instagram post he had last night where he photoshopped the heads of a couple of Astros players onto his kids, and wanted to take the time to apologize to absolutely nobody, Conor McGregor style. So
that's an early contender for Image of the Year. That's got Pulitzer Prize written all over it.
So he's certainly earned the respect of a lot of baseball fans that were aggravated by that situation. Again, I just, me personally, I'm not a big fan of the way he went about doing it.
Well, were it me, I would start pegging people, but I don't have the moral code that you do. Let's move right along here. We've got hot or not. It's early, but we're, like you said earlier today, we're basically 10% of the way through the season. So it's similar to seeing 16 or 18 games in a regular Major League season, which is enough time for you to tell if somebody's, in the middle of a slump or if they're on a hot streak. Chris, tell me somebody who's hot right now.
Well, the first name I'll throw out there is Mike Yastrzemski for San Francisco, a pretty anonymous team. Not a lot of people paying attention to the Giants. I mean, you think about the fact that they started the year in Los Angeles, a very difficult 4-game series against the Dodgers. He's hitting over 400 to start the year, had a very good second half last year. 2 home runs already, has kind of cemented himself in the middle of that San Francisco order as a key piece for them, both in the short term and potentially in the long term. So I think he's really been a guy that's caught my eye here in these first couple games. It would certainly be Mike Yastrzemski.
That is grandson of Hall of Fame outfielder Carl Yastrzemski. He was a rookie last year at age 28, kind of a late bloomer, but he does look good for that Giants team that kind of relies on guys who fly under the radar to start their careers, don't they?
Yeah, they're not really a team that's loaded with stars year in and year out. They tend to get the best out of players, either that you haven't really heard of from the minors, or guys kind of at the back end of their career. Hunter Pence, his turnaround kind of comes to mind, and I don't think we all
San Fran now.
Yeah, and I don't think we necessarily expected Pablo Sandoval to have the staying power that he's had for his entire career. This is a Giants team that's without Buster Posey too. Their biggest name player is sitting out the season, so they've certainly needed somebody to kind of build around and get the fans excited about. And right now, Yastrzemski's kind of come to the forefront.
Posey's one of the biggest names that's opted out this season too.
Yeah, another name I'll throw out's a guy who played for the Giants last year. That's Kevin Pillar in Boston. I mean, their pitching staff's a mess, the Red Sox, but so far they've done a decent job hitting the ball. He was hitting over 500. He was among the league leaders in batting average, and really seems to be seeing it well. And the things that he's not maybe seeing well have dropped in. He had a couple of hits against the Mets the other night that didn't look like they were screamers off the bat, but they found a hole. So I would definitely put Kevin Pillar in that category too.
Another guy at the top for the Red Sox right now, or was as of a few days ago, Jackie Bradley Jr. was leading Major League Baseball in hits through 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about somebody who's not. So who's ice cold right now? I'm going to bring up a guy, Gary Sanchez. He is looking really rough at the plate so far, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a better idea having probably scouted the Yankees a bit more heavily than I do, but yeah, it feels like he got off.
No idea what you're talking about.
It feels like he got off of a slow start 2 years ago as well. Like it took him a while to really even float above 200. So
he's very much an all or nothing kind of guy. A couple of years back, he batted about 186, 18 home runs. Last season, he batted 232, 30-something home runs. He's very much a 3 true outcome hitter. One thing you don't expect out of him, though, I'm going to silver line this rain cloud a little bit. He's been drawing rave reviews for his pitch receiving this season, and that's something that's a problem for him so far in his career. Garrett Cole, you really want him to be happy, right? He's really enjoyed throwing to Gary Sanchez. Gary Sanchez really knows how to call a good game, according to Garrett Cole. So it doesn't really matter that he's 0 for 12 with 8 strikeouts through 4 games because he can catch a ball real well.
It'll matter eventually. The Yankees fans, whether they're present or not, are going to let him know about it, and obviously, they're going to need him to start hitting sooner rather than later. Can you really expect the Yankees to keep that lineup together for 60 straight games? When you look at the injury histories of Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton, among others, I think he's really got to start turning it around and contributing sooner rather than later.
All right, well, let's talk about somebody else who is hot right now. Let's talk about a young gentleman by the name of Kyle Lewis out of Seattle, one of the top prospects in their system, and he is stroking the ball right now.
Yeah, they were excited about him too. Again, I think it's interesting. We've spent time talking about the surprising players. They're not on really teams that we really have expectations for. You talk about San Francisco, Boston, and now Seattle. The Mariners are kind of definitively the 4th or 5th best team in the AL West, according to most of the experts. But Kyle Lewis really became a key part of that team in the second half of the year. 24 years old, if I'm not mistaken, center fielder. Really got off to a good start, and I think is going to be a key player for their rebuild. They've got a lot of young guys coming up. They made a big trade with the Mets last offseason to bring in Jared Kelenic, a highly touted first-round draft pick as an outfielder. And
hitting the ball with authority right now in the minors.
Yeah, he had a great year in the minors. They've got Jared, so they've got Kelenic, they've got Logan Gilbert, who's a guy I covered at Stetson University for 3 years, was a first-round pick of theirs 2 seasons ago, has had a terrific year in the minors as a starting pitcher. They got Justin Dunn in the trade from with the Mets as well. They've made a handful of big moves to try to cement themselves as a potential team in 2 years' time where they could really challenge to win the AL West as the Astros maybe start to kind of hit the wrong side of the mountain.
Kyle Lewis right now is batting .458 through 24 at-bats. He's got a .708 slugging percentage. So if he can, obviously he's not going to sustain this pace. He's not going to bat .458 for the entire season. He's not our boy Miguel Rojas, batting average leader for the NL East leading Miami Marlins. But if he can sustain some sort of hot pace for the rest of the season, he looks like a long-term piece between him, Kelenic, and I believe they have one more prospect. It's Rodriguez, another outfielder.
Mm-hmm.
Between the 3 of them, that looks like a pretty good outfield for the future of Mariner baseball.
Right. Yeah, and another guy I think that's gotten off to a really good start, we talked about him a little off camera, is Sonny Gray for Cincinnati, who's had two back-to-back really, really good starts. And he was kind of the third member of that rotation. He started opening day, but I think you kind of pointed Trevor Bauer and Luis Castillo leading that rotation. It's been a struggle for them offensively. The Reds have been without a couple of key starters, and Nick Senzel and Mike Moustakas, and with fears over COVID, they both were showing some symptoms and were sick on Sunday. So they were both scratched from the lineup and missed 3 straight games, but they were both cleared to return last night, and they helped them, the Reds beat the Cubs. So now that they're kind of closer to full strength, they're still without Matt Davidson, who did test positive. But you've got those 3 guys leading the rotation. That's why people were high on the Reds. They thought, these are 3 guys who could really carry us, and we've got enough offense in a smaller ballpark to really do some damage.
Yeah, Sonny Gray right now 2-0, 0.71 ERA. That's 1 earned run allowed in 12 2/3 innings on a solo home run. He's got a ridiculous 20-3 strikeout to walk ratio. Wish he was this good in pinstripes. We're not going to get into that.
Yeah.
Another guy who's hot, we touched on the other night, Nelson Cruz.
Yeah, and no surprise there. I think
AARP candidate Nelson Cruz coming out of the crypt to absolutely destroy pitchers one last time.
Yeah, there's no surprise there. I mean, he's as good of a pure power hitter as you'll find in this league, and being allowed to be the designated hitter all these years has really extended his productivity, playing for a team that loves to launch the ball out of the ballpark in Minnesota. He's already done it 3 times this year, if I'm not mistaken. So, Cruz in the middle of that order is going to have a ton of chances to drive in runs and have another productive season all the way around.
Yeah, Twins are looking like a team that's going to be very dangerous for this year and possibly, hopefully for them next year.
Unless they play the Yankees, that seems to be their kryptonite. Like every single year between them and Oakland, I want to get excited about both of those franchises, and they always seem to draw the Yankees in the first round, and they just have no chance. There's just a mental hurdle or a block that just prevents the Twins or the A's from really capitalizing on all the talent and all the depth that they've got in those organizations.
The pinstripes, they're intimidating. All that history. Got a question from young Mr. Courtney Brown. Will the NL keep the DH? Seems like that's a topic of discussion around the league. The NL probably should keep the DH if it was up to me, but it's not up to me. I don't get to make those decisions anytime soon. Chris, how do you feel? Do you think the NL should keep a DH? Is that a good move?
That's the expectation. As far as I read when they agreed to the collective bargaining agreement, when they got baseball back together, was that this was going to be the plan for the long haul. And if you think about it, would you rather see a guy hitting in the high 200s, low 300s, or would you rather see a pitcher struggling to hit over 150? I think you want to make.
Oh no, sorry, I wanted the right answer. No,
you want to have it as difficult as possible. You want to make the lineup as potent as possible. I think the DH is a welcome change. I'm personally a fan of it. It's kind of a sour taste in some fans' mouth for traditionalists' sake, to make the leagues different from one another. And it has provided some great moments over the years. I remember a couple of years back watching the Mets and seeing Bartolo Colon homer against San Diego.
Bartolo probably get some games as a DH where he's still playing in Major League Baseball.
And there have been plenty of hitters that can legitimately go out there and stroke the ball. Jacob deGrom immediately comes to mind as a guy that can certainly swing the bat. And
Madison Bumgarner.
Yeah, Madison Bumgarner, certainly. There's a few guys you can think of right off the top of your head that are very capable hitters. But I think overall, making it more competitive and making it tougher for pitchers to get outs and not giving yourselves a freebie down at the bottom of the order makes it a better game overall.
Will we see more two-way players coming up if that ends up being the case? More Shohei Ohtanis, more Brendan McKays, more guys like that?
I think it probably will. I think versatility is going to help you no matter what. The ability to get into the lineup and do multiple things and contribute, whether it's once every 5 days as a pitcher, or if you can pitch and then go out there and be in the lineup on the other three or four of the other days. I do think you'll start to see more of the utility players be used, and it's surprising it's kind of taken this long to really become a trend. But yeah, Ohtani and McKay are two guys that are really kind of setting the standard right now for what we think baseball will look like over the next decade or so.
Assuming Ohtani can actually get into shape on the mound, his ERA is still somewhere above infinite, having gotten 0 outs so far this season and allowing 3 earned runs. So he would have been the next in our not category. And let's close out that category, move right along to a couple of cool youngsters. We got right here out of Central Florida, we got pitcher Nate Pearson, plays for the Toronto Blue Jays and throws about 100 miles an hour on average. Started his major league career off with a nice hot 5 innings, no runs, and 5 strikeouts.
Well, not only did he do that, he did it against the defending champions. He did it head-to-head against Max Scherzer. So I think that's really impressive. If you're a Blue Jays fan, you've got to be thrilled to see him go out there and compete and against the best competition possible. And, of course,
Part of being an ace starter is being able to go up against other ace starters and go toe-to-toe with them. So that's pretty good. He was able to go up against Scherzer and put in that kind of performance.
I'm bullish on the Blue Jays as an organization. I think they're very exciting. You look at Guerrero Jr., they've got the three guys who have the famous dads, and Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the second generation or even third generation stars.
Guys, don't forget about Lourdes Gurriel Jr.
and Gurriel, of course. And then they've got some other useful players, and now you add some really interesting arms to that rotation between Pearson as a young guy, Hyunjin Ryu, who was a legitimate Cy Young candidate for the Dodgers last year, and Tanner Roark, who I think is a very handy middle of the rotation starter. So I really think the Blue Jays are a contender. If you look at the fact that there are 8 wild card spots this year, or 8 playoff spots, I should say, I can't really think of 8 better teams in Toronto or Buffalo. Excuse me. I can't really
Buffalo Blue Jays this season.
I can't really think of 8 better teams in the Blue Jays in the American League. I really expect them to challenge hard and make the playoffs.
All right, that sounds like to me a bold prediction that the Blue Jays are a playoff team right now. Let's talk about Luis Robert, hot prospect, maybe number 1 in baseball, makes his debut for the White Sox, and he looks pretty doggone good. He's fast, he's powerful, he steals fly balls from teammates. He's got everything you want in a center fielder.
Yeah, and this is the guy that at the beginning of the year was being touted as the American League Rookie of the Year front runner. Is going to start every day for the White Sox just about, and they're seeing kind of exactly what you'd want to see right out of the gate. Another team that I think is has a lot of people excited for the long-term prospects is Chicago. Between him and some of the other guys they called up last year, you seeing Tim Anderson still have a very productive. He had a very productive game the other night. I think he had 3 hits, and then
last year's batting average leader, Tim Anderson.
Yeah, and Yoan Moncada is still a player they're very excited about. So yeah, I think the White Sox, if Robert can continue to do what he's doing right now, they're going to be a really fun team to watch, and they play in another ballpark that just the ball flies right out of in Chicago.
Going to be interesting to see what they can do once their pitching staff is at full strength. Once they get Michael Kopech back.
Yeah, he's sitting out the entire year too, right?
Well, he's sitting out the entire year because of Tommy John surgery.
That's right.
Yeah, he's not sick. He's just busted. But he'll be back, throwing 105 again. We've got one more prospect to talk about. You covered him, actually, as a younger fella, didn't you?
Yeah, I wrote a piece earlier. Yeah, they're all young fellas to me. I mean, I'm in my 30s now and feeling as though I'm old. And, we're talking about Tyler Stevenson, who's 23, was drafted at age 18, and became the first Cincinnati Reds player in 70 years to homer in his first career plate appearance the other night. So I wrote about him. And I also wrote about TJ Antone, 2 guys that came up through Daytona Beach and played for the franchise called the Tortugas, the the high A franchise of the Reds. And Antone threw 4 1/3 innings, allowed just a solo home run to Anthony Rizzo, and struck out 5. Looked really good. Had terrific spin rates on his pitches. Can really throw the slider and throw a very hard fastball now. He throws it a lot harder than he did when he was in Daytona. He was more of a low 90s kind of guy as a starter. Now he's in the bullpen. He's getting it up over 97. So
once you go to the bullpen, you don't have to worry about longevity. You just got to worry about throwing it.
Yeah, and that might serve him well because he's certainly got a powerful enough arm to do it. But Stevenson got optioned back when Mike Moustakas was healthy enough to play, but certainly promising to see a first-round pick, a guy the Reds took 11th overall to come out there and really play very well in his first game. Not only did he homer, but he was on base all 3 times and drove in 2 runs as well and scored twice.
Oh, it looks like a lot of former Tortugas are looking like they're going to have nice careers. That's cool feather in your cap, having covered them as
Yeah, it was weird. Like I covered, so the Cubs were there before the Reds were. So I saw a number of the guys that ended up winning the World Series with the Cubs come through Daytona as well. Chris Bryant, right after he got drafted, got sent immediately to Daytona after he got picked 2nd overall. Javi Baez went through there. I covered a 4 home run game. So it's fun to see these guys, at the very beginning of their professional careers and, wonder what they're going to become. For instance, I thought Baez certainly had all the talent to do so, but he was a very free swinger and continues to be. I didn't know if that would translate as well as it has to the big leagues, but clearly it does, and clearly he's good enough swinging the bat to be an RBI leader, to be a guy that can still hit 280, even though the on base percentage is going to be closer to like 320 because he's just not going to walk.
That's all there is to it.
But it's fun to see a lot of these guys who now have become stars in the game start out in pretty humble beginnings.
Well, who's surprising you so far in Major League Baseball this season? We talked about it. We touched on it just a little bit earlier. I know you were talking about Colorado's pitching staff, which is not ever something that's ever been good in the history of that franchise. They've allowed a whole lot more runs than they've scored as a franchise, and now they're suddenly the best pitching staff in baseball.
I mean, we'll touch on the Rockies a little bit. I've really been just surprised at how bad things have gone for Boston. That pitching staff is truly horrendous. Like, they really do not have a rotation. They've gone into bullpen games a couple of times already this year. They just don't have a lot of depth there. I mean, obviously Eduardo Rodriguez's situation is severe, having tested positive for COVID and then having a heart problem related to that. So he was a guy that ate a ton of innings for them, was arguably one of the 5 best pitchers in baseball after the All-Star break last year. So when you're without him, when you lose Porcello to the Mets in free agency, when you just don't replace those guys, I've just been surprised at how dire that situation truly is for the Red Sox right now.
Well, it was expected that they were going to struggle this season, having gotten rid of 2 of their larger pieces in Mookie Betts and David Price. But to this degree, I don't think anyone expected. And there's a chance that they could make it work again as the season goes on. But like we said earlier, 10% of the season is practically a full sample size. So at this point, the Boston Red Sox are a lost cause, and let's forget about them.
I'd put the Padres in the surprise category too. They've also gotten off to a good start. It's tough to tell just what direction they were going to go, because last year there was that expectation they'd flirt for a wild card spot, and it really didn't happen for them. But Fernando Tatis looks like the real deal. Eric Hosmer knocked in 7 runs right out of the gate. Machado, if they can get anywhere close to top of the line production from him, would be nothing but short of a godsend. And then they've still got some arms that they haven't even debuted yet. Chris Paddock has succeeded at the top of that rotation, but they still have Mackenzie Gore waiting in the wings, and they've got other guys in a very deep system to where whether it's right now and it might help them in a 60-game sprint if they want to just bring up the most talented baseball players to make a push. They might serve themselves well by the time September rolls around to do that. But I think this is another team that's set up really well for the future.
Yeah, the Padres have been building for years through that farm system. They've been really doing their best to put solid prospects together. And this is really it coming to fruition now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a long, painful process to go through a rebuild, particularly when you're in a smaller market team. Very few do it successfully to truly have a really good team and then have to watch those players walk away either by trade or by free agency when the dollars come into the equation, and then to immediately turn back around and contend again. I mean, the Rays have been the anomaly. They've not been the they've been the standard, but they haven't been a trend. It's kind of been an isolated incident, whereas you're more likely to see teams that have gone through longer rebuilds like the Orioles. You think back just 5 years ago, they were contending in the wild card. They had Adam Jones, and Zach Britton was the best closer in baseball, and they had a pretty good lineup up and down, and a good enough pitching staff to carry them. And now they've been one of the worst teams in the league for several years, and vice versa. You've got the Astros, who had a whole bunch of bad years. All of a sudden, they rebuild the entire thing, and they're the top team in baseball. Trash cans or not.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do to win, and if you get caught doing what you got to do, then there's consequences. Speaking of teams that struggle because they are a small market and choose not to spend money, and surprising us so far this season, Miami Marlins might be over 500 for the last time this season at 2-1. They are 0-1 against the coronavirus, unfortunately, but they are starting out with a Major League Baseball record of 2-1. And for the third time in this podcast, I will name drop our boy Miguel Rojas. Miguel would not start on 29 of the team's Rojas and his league-leading 700 batting average. Well,
yeah, it's just 3 games. I mean, they do tend to give some of those teams in the NL East a little bit more fight than they are expecting. But over the course of 60 or 162 games, they just don't have enough right now. And especially when you talk about potentially being without 17 players for more than a week, it's just hard to imagine they're going to do anything of consequence in this season.
Yeah, what was supposed to be a rough season for them just because of the way they're built is going to be an even rougher season now that they're dealing with a team-wide.
I personally hope that they succeed. I think it would be an amazing story if somehow this team that's ravaged by illness, that's potentially going to be using guys either that are being claimed on waivers or that are making their debuts, if they're able to contend and really fight for good teams in their division, I think it'd be an amazing story to watch that happen.
Feel-good story for the ages, for sure. Speaking of feel-good stories for the ages, Daniel Bard, 2 games into his major league comeback and looking pretty doggone good with that 100-mile-an-hour heater like he never left.
Yeah, I kind of forgot that he'd come back. Thank you for reminding me. And he's a part of that Colorado bullpen, if I'm not mistaken.
He is. He's a big piece of that bullpen. I mean, as big as you can be after 2 games, but a lot bigger than they expected him to be.
Right.
He was working. It's interesting because he left the game because of the yips. Couldn't throw a strike. Couldn't even hit the dude. Couldn't hit the side of a building. He threw the ball at the ground. He'd miss. But he actually came back into the league as a mental health coach for one of the teams. Decided that he could still fling a baseball. Found somebody's mitt and hit it. And now he's back to throwing major league quality heat.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, we've seen that a few times. I remember Rick Ankiel just never recovered from it and became a position player. I mean, it's a lot of that mental. There is a mental block when you're pitching. If you lose control, if you lose the strike zone, it is so tough to get it back. So it's really cool to see Daniel Bard have this opportunity. I remember there was a reliever that came through Daytona who ended up getting into the big leagues too, named Robert Stock. Who played with San Diego last year and has also played with a couple other teams. Was a catcher out of high school or out of the draft. Was picked by the Cardinals. Then they converted him to a pitcher. Just didn't work out for him. And he had in Arizona. He was living with his girlfriend at the time, and he just went out to a park and started chucking it as hard as he could. Was hitting high 90s, and then started throwing consistently in the minors and having that kind of productivity with that kind of velocity, and boom, like 2 years later he was in the big league. So it's incredible what you can accomplish just purely based on what God gives you and the arm talent that you have and possess, and somebody will, it takes longer than others, but there's somebody that will try to make you a strike thrower, and in this case I guess Colorado might have found something that nobody else would have expected.
You have to be a man of sheer will and determination in order to make a comeback in Major League Baseball once you've had the yips.
Mm-hmm.
So good on Daniel Bard. We're glad to see him. We're glad to see him back throwing absolute cheddar. And I think we've got time for just one more segment. I kind of want to surprise you with it because you haven't seen it yet. So here's what we're going to do. Chris, tell me a couple of your favorite mascots in professional baseball.
Now we're really getting to the issues of the day. I would say, I mean, I've always been partial to Mr. Met and Mrs. Met, one of America's greatest couples. Long-standing, traditional relationship values. You see what true love takes you. The Philly Fanatic's always been fun. The Pirates mascot, I forget the name of the bird, but I think it's a really neat looking mascot as well. And I'm more of a fan of the races, the mascot races. You'll see like the president races in Washington and the sausage races in Milwaukee. Those are kind of more where I live.
Washington president's race, because I'm pretty partial to Teddy Roosevelt. Dude was an athlete from the beginning. He was a boxer, boxed with his glasses on, got his glasses busted, and now he's a sausage running at a baseball field. That's the real comeback story of the day, is seeing President Teddy Roosevelt winning races like he never left. So
what
here's
do you
why.
have to show me?
Yeah, not an elegant segue, but this is my favorite mascot in professional baseball is a young man by the name of Ser, S-S-E-R-I, Seri. His name is Seri.
Okay.
He's the mascot for the NC Dinos of the Korean Baseball Organization. And he goes on the internet more colloquially by the name Swole Daddy. He is a brontosaurus. He is a big old chonky boy, big neck, big beautiful necklace. And his nickname is, if you Google it, Swole Daddy. So this is mascot of the year right here. Actually, it's the job that I want next, is to move to Korea and be Swole Daddy for a living.
I gotta say, when I was watching, I did start watching the KBO back in the spring when it started. I gotta say, when I found out there was a team called the NC Dinos and they didn't like outwardly have a dinosaur on either its jersey or its hat, that I was extremely disappointed because it was ready to become. I was ready to ship it to my house. Unfortunately, that's not the case. But they're a lot more subtle in their uniform designs than we are here in the States. So
until you find the mascot.
The mascot, I gotta say, that is a 10 out of 10 mascot. That is a terrific
hashtag Swole Daddy
creature.
We've got one more question right out of the comments from our own George Frisch here at Loudmouth. He actually brings up the brilliant inquiry: how funny is the managers yelling at umps with social distancing? I would have to say extremely. Because as somebody who has wanted to yell at umps, all I've ever wanted to do is get right up in their grill and make them physically throw me out of the game. So watching somebody have to yell at an umpire from 6 or 7 feet away it really warms my heart.
Often through a mask too. Like I think Aaron Boone got upset one of the first games of the season, if I remember correctly. He was very irritated about something. It's strange. It's definitely weird to see just like, you know, some of those things not be a part of, not be, I wouldn't say a part of it. You're still going to see guys forget it. It's just human nature to get pissed off at a call and then march towards the umpire and, you know, ready to raise hell. But yeah, it's definitely been a strange dystopian kind of year in all different respects, and baseball is not immune to it.
We're going to need larger shoes, perhaps ones with flippers on the front so that we can kick dirt on umpires from 6 feet away. I don't see regular cleats doing the trick from such a distance. They weren't built for long-range dirt kicking. They were definitely built more for scooping or even scuffing, certainly not for long-range kicking.
No one will have a rant that was better than the Braves AA manager, I think, from a few years back, where he crept up behind the pitcher's mound, grabbed the rosin bag, bit the pin out, and tossed it like a grenade towards home plate. Nothing will beat that.
I can't believe I never saw that.
It is the undefeated, like, going out in a blaze of glory managerial moment.
That's something that I aspire to, and now as a young man, something that I really hope that I can attain at an older age is to have such panache as to go out to the mound and see the rosin bag and just abuse it.
You know that guy concocted that plan for months. Like,
oh, that's not something.
Years. That is not spontaneous in the slightest. Like he's told his friends and told his buddies at the bar for like months. Just wait. The next good one.
Next ump that gets me mad, I'm gonna pull the pin out of the rosin bag and toss it at him. But is that more or less iconic than the manager of the Pirates stealing second base?
Oh, Lloyd McClendon, that was awesome too. I forgot about that one. That's another unforgettable. Like, you know what? I'm taking this bag. I'm going home. You guys can't play without second base.
So we've got a hierarchy of things that managers can do to just swing their you-know-what around. It's take a base, throw the rosin bag like a grenade.
I would flip them.
Flip what?
The grenade one wins.
You say grenade.
There's nothing that will top that.
Interesting. Interesting. You would think that. So grenade rosin bag is even bigger than literally
taking the base and going home. Yes, I would. I have to applaud the creativity and the intricacy that went into that.
There is a certain performance value that's given to a grenade pull rosin bag that you just don't get when you pull a base out of the ground.
That's true.
Well, my friend, I think we've covered all of our bases. I've been Robbie. That's been Chris. We are ahead of the curve, and see you next week. Thanks for joining us, cousin.
Thank you.
end. Oh, for Christ's sake. Stop watching, everybody.
Now you see the behind the scenes of Robie
I didn't
killing
click the second
technology.
thing. Now we're going off.